Our guest this morning is from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. He's Paul Samoei. He's a senior manager with the KNBS. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is the one that does the census, right? They're the ones who come and count us. Uko na boat ngapi kwa hii flat? Uko na ng'ombe?
Boat.
Uko na umbwa ngapi?
Uko na umbwa ngapi?
Paka ngapi?
Nyinyi ni wangapi? Uko na bibi ngapi? And then the wife is looking at you like
nataka kujua.
Paul, welcome to the Situation Room. It's good to have you.
Okay.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. I've just done, the introduction that people know. The people who come every 10 years to conduct a census. And we've talked about this many times even on this show. The awareness created ahead of the last census was absolutely spot on. In fact, you even saw the videos on social media with children saying, "Huyu ni mtu wa census." That shows that there was awareness up to the level where children know that there is something called a census, which is a good thing. And well done to you and your team. Now, what else does KNBS do?
We do a lot of things. We measure statistics in various areas. We do poverty numbers. We do CPI. We do labor.
What is CPI?
Consumer Price Index. We do the poverty that I've mentioned. And all spheres of statistics, transport, everything. So it's not only census.
Okay.
But we always produce also economic survey every year, which is a very popular report stating the status of economy in the country.
Who's the consumer of your data?
Everybody in Kenya. Yeah. Yes.
So can I walk to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and say that I'm looking for information on 1, 2, 3, and then that comes to me? Or is it that it is provided for government use? Or can anybody then just walk in and say, can you provide me with information on such?
The data that we collect is meant for public. So anybody can walk into Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and request any kind of data. Yeah.
But in this modern day and age, these people like my sister who want to walk in physically, there's an easier way of getting that information. All this information that we speak of is actually available online. I am saying this because I'm actually a great
You're a consumer.
I'm a serious consumer of what Kenya National Bureau. In fact, me, I'm a fan. The things you find in their website, the information you get is mind-boggling. You read it and you say, you mean this is available here? But I like Ndu's approach because we are literal people and we want to feel you walk. Yes, you walk into that website and you will be shocked. You ask a question, they'll give you a response. And what I have found particularly interesting, the details, my goodness. The details of what you are given.
Right.
Oh, it's something to behold. As you can see, I am a fan.
Kabisa.
Yeah,
Paul,
I can see you're a fan.
you're established by an act of parliament, or by law,
Yes.
right? That means that the job that you do, you are mandated to do this job.
Yes.
Now, are there other state agencies that are mandated to consume your information and to act on it?
Our mandate is just to produce statistics and disseminate. The other agencies are using statistics for policy making, and others are using for other ways, for research and any other thing that they want to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically,
But-
what I'm asking is, are there other institutions such as yourself within government that also collect this kind of information, such that I can go and find the policy that is being rolled out by government? The government is relying on information that not necessarily has come from KNBS, but from some other quarters. Or can we say that when the government is actually rolling out policies and programs, they are feeding information that has come from you?
Okay, what we do is we produce statistics that are used by government. But if we go to ministries, they also do produce statistics. And for example, statistics on COVID, which is being mentioned every day. Those are other statistics. But ours is we collect data, analyze, and then we disseminate. So we are the custodian mandated by government to do all these things and collect and disseminate.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's get to the heart of the matter. Yesterday, there was a headline, the big headline in the nation, that was talking about poverty levels rising in the country. And it was quoting data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, data that was first released in 2020, looking at the SDGs, and it was showing that, there was a rise in terms of levels of poverty, coming up to 53% of Kenya's poverty rate at 53% compared to 36% a couple of years earlier. That was in 2018 compared to, was it 2013? Give us the genesis of this data. What was the information that you were gathering, and what was the report that you released?
Okay, in 2015-16, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics conducted a survey called Kenya Integrated Household Budget Survey. From this, it was an integrated survey, but what we were collecting most is consumption expenditure by households. When we collect consumption expenditure by households, at the end of the day, we intend to produce poverty numbers. And these poverty numbers are normally produced using now the monometric approach, that is monetary approach, where you ask households what they consumed in terms of food and non-food. So when we collect this information, we analyze. We disseminated a report in 2018 that gave poverty numbers for Kenya at 36.1%. Now, when you break this down, you can break down by male, female, you can break by age group and households. So what you saw yesterday, the first part, where we were saying that female are at 6.2 and male at 6.1. These are meant information that we had disseminated in 2018. Then below it, we had numbers now by age group, 0 to 17 was 41.5. Then 18 to 35 was 29.1. All that way up to the older ones, which is 70 plus, at 39.1. That information was collated from the report that we disseminated in 2018. Then we have another report that we prepared using the same data, but now using different approach. Now, this different approach is what we call MODA. It's multiple overlapping deprivation analysis. This is whereby now you take the population and look at which other ways can we explain poverty. If you look at the SDGs, goal number 1, it's saying eradicate poverty in all its form. Now, the form number 1 is where I've talked about the monetary approach, which is 36.1. In 2018, all the way to 2020, we worked on another report that is using a different approach, which is what I've said, multiple overlapping deprivation analysis. This method look at other things, which is non-monetary. Yes, we look at education, we look at nutrition, we look at development of a child, like standing, we look at economic. Now, we use the same data set and analyze and produce another report which we disseminated, and it was showing that Kenyans, 53% were deprived in those variables that I've mentioned. And now, this is not new data, but in a different form.
It's a different way of looking at the same 36.1%.
Yes.
That you had found were monetary poor.
Monetary poor, yes.
So those who are monetary poor, then now you look further into those who are monetary poor. Can they afford health? Do they have proper nutrition?
Yes.
Do they have access to education?
Yes.
And you found that it's actually even worse.
Yeah, using different approach, which are not comparable at this time. And again, in 2014, We've been, there's another method called MPI. The MPI is where you look at information when you don't have a monetary, and then you look at what are you deprived. This is a method used by Oxford University, and this is a global MPI. And it shows that 38.9% of Kenyans are poor multidimensionally, but now using different approach. The other one is multiple overlapping, but this one is called MPI.
Okay.
This looks at education as a dimension. It looks at the welfare as a dimension, and it looks at health. So there are different variables are used in every time.
So bottom line,
Yes.
when the story was saying that 53% of Kenyans were poor in 2018 as compared to 36% in 2014, they were comparing apples and oranges.
Correct.
So this was factually incorrect.
Yeah, it was incorrect.
Have the poverty levels changed between 2013 and 2020?
We expect them to have changed. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics have been doing surveys. Actually, we are doing a survey called Kenya Continuous Household Survey, which we started in 2019. This data collected 2020 and 2021. We are doing analysis and we are yet to release the information. So this information now will show the current status when 2019 when we didn't have COVID and 2020 when we had COVID. So you'll see the difference by when we launch the reports.
I'm interested to know what the determining factors are, because I mean poverty as a definition obviously then shows that there is lack or there's deprivation at some point. So now that and you said that there are collective factors here, right? So if in 2018 we're looking at 38.9% of Kenyans then are poor. What are they poor in certain areas, or is it a collection? How would you then determine that one individual is poor over another? Is it an inability to access something, or lack of cash in hand to be able to get certain things done or to purchase? What then determines that one individual is poor? And then you have all the molecules building up to say then out of all of this, it becomes 38%.
Okay. If we take, for example, the MPI, which is 38.9%, we look at 3 dimensions. As I've said, health, education, and the welfare. Now you look at education, and under education we look at how, those children who are supposed to be in school, are they going to school?
Okay.
So if a household has a member of a household who is supposed to be going to school and is not going to school, we say that household is deprived.
Okay.
Okay. We look again at the number of years of schooling. For example, if you are supposed to have gone, if we cut off and say standard 8 is the cutoff, then we look at somebody who has not reached standard 8, then that person is deprived. So that is how we look at individual deprivation, and then we sum up the deprivation for every household, and that's why we are getting 38.9.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you then be able to go further on to say then, if you're looking at that 38.9%, then you would say across these 3 factors, then 1 in every 3 Kenyans is then deprived at that level? If we're looking at that 38.9%.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I will say, for example, this one, if I approximate it, then I will say 4 out of 10 Kenyans are multi-dimensionally poor.
Poor.
Yeah.
As you look at these numbers, I mean, I understand that the position is to collate this information and then disseminate it. What is done with it thereafter really is not under your job description, right? Looking at the mandate that you have to fulfill. But as you collect this information and send it out, does it get worrying in terms of what you're seeing, in terms of the trends having changed over the last if we're looking at 2014 to 2018, and they're now saying that, well, we don't have all the data in place yet. If we then looked at the next 4 years, from 2018 until 2022, for example, the downward trend, right, in terms of quality, or the upward trend in terms of the increment, in terms of poverty, are these then worrying statistics, even if it's just collecting it?
Okay, if I'm comparing figures, for example, when I'm dealing with monometric approach and I look at the trend, then you look at that trend, also looking at the population, how many of that. For example, if I say that 6.1% of Kenyans are poor using the monometric approach, then it is worrying when you look at the numbers vis-a-vis the total population. Yes. For example, when we produced that, it was showing that about 16 million Kenyans are poor using that approach. Yes.
And is it 16 million adults or 16 million Kenyans?
The 16 million Kenyans. It is per capita.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's close to 50%.
I think what really everybody is looking for is that harmonized definition of poverty.
Yes.
Because, okay, yeah, so you have all these other methods of looking at it. But is there a singular definition of poverty and say, who is a poor person, Paul?
Okay. You see, the economists have different ways of saying this person is poor. If we look at the World Bank approach, where now we are talking about the money approach, the expenditure, the consumption per person. And this is looking at the nutrition value. When you purchase food, you clothe yourself and you go to the hospital. So this is the well-being of a person. So that is a different method. Then there is somebody called Amartya Sen who came and said, now you cannot use the money to say so-and-so is poor. So he approached it from now deprivation part, where he's looking at the human being with capability approach. I am able to function if I have education. I'm able to function if I have this type of education and that and that. So these are different ways of approach in poverty.
But all of them, bottom line, is deprivation.
Yes.
Are you likely to find somebody who is monetarily poor, but they have access to health, education, good nutrition, food security?
Yes, if you look at the book where they got the 53%, if you look at it, we have gone further to analyze and say, of those people who are 36.1%, how many of them are deprived in this, how many are deprived in that? So it is giving analysis. If you get that book, or if you go to KNBS website and look for that book, you'll see those people who are multidimensionally poor at the same time
don't have money.
They don't have money. Yes.
So that's a basic.
Yeah, that's a
If you don't have money, then you are also likely not to have you're likely to be deprived of then this other basic human needs.
And it's over a period of time, right? Because I think it comes into mind that definition for some people is I may not have money today, but in the next 2 or so months I might have.
Yeah.
So are you looking at this over a certain period of time, that if an individual or family unit over time constantly is in this state of being monetarily poor, no cash in hand, that's when they would then be deemed poor? But it's not a quickly changing kind of situation.
Yes, if you use the money approach, the person will be in, out, because today you have money, tomorrow
Right.
you don't have money to purchase whatever you want.
Yeah.
But when you look at the asset approach, you'll find that this person might be constant because the assets are constant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other method is a bit constant, but the money approach is
Fluctuates.
fluctuates.
Okay.
Up, down, up, down.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. With us in the studio is Paul Samoei. He's a senior manager with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. We are looking at the various indices that define Kenyans as either we have or we don't have. He tells us 4 out of every 10 Kenyans are multidimensionally poor. That is the latest statistic that they developed after some survey that was conducted and a report released in 2020. Then They'll be giving us some further details, of course, in their ongoing survey. But what is there officially is that 4 out of every 10 Kenyans are multidimensionally poor. You have lack of access to food, lack of access to nutrition, lack of access to health, or one or all of these, and also lack of access to money.
You know, whenever we talk about the methods that we use, these are universal methods that have been tested, proved, tried. But, there's always a but. How sensitive and specific are they to our situation here? I'll give you an example of what I mean. For the longest time, the World Bank had a definition of what we call the Juakali sector. They call it the hidden economy. Meaning, there's this thing that these people seem to do, but the units of measure that they use to understand poverty and development, this sector didn't quite fit into their standard of measure. Now, if we look at the model that we are using to determine some of the things that we are saying, how close to our reality or how close to representing our reality do these methods?
Okay. If we look at the methods that we are using, actually, if the simplest to understand is the manometric approach, where you're looking at how much can you purchase whatever you want. For example, on food, that the example I've given.
How much you can purchase or how much you're able to purchase?
How much you're able to purchase.
Okay.
Yes. So, based on this approach, we come up with what we call the poverty line. This is where we say this is a threshold, where if a Kenyan cannot have certain amount in Kenya shillings, is deemed to be poor. So, for example, in 2015-16, our poverty line, for example, in rural areas, was 3,252
A month?
So, per month. If a household cannot afford that per month, then it was deemed to be poor. Now,
Okay, sorry.
so if you go to urban, for example, the urban now, the poverty line for urban is different. If a household cannot have 5,995 Kenya shillings per month,
That is
it
6,000.
was deemed to be poor. So there is a threshold. So this methodology is an easy to understand. Yes.
So, again, the rural is 3,000?
Rural is 3,252.
So if a household
Yes.
in rural Kenya cannot afford to spend 3,252 a month,
Yeah.
and this is whatever they want to do. Well,
Yeah, whatever they want to do. Per adult equivalent, sorry. So you have to add per adult equivalent.
Okay, the adults in the household.
The adult in the household.
If they are not able to basically spend 3,200 in a month,
Yes.
then they are below the poverty line.
Yes.
And 6,000 if you're in urban areas.
Yes.
I love Sita. I see where the love Sita is coming from.
Yes, you have seen.
I love Sita. No, you wanted to ask a question.
Right. So, I mean, I was looking at the details of what this money is being spent on, because, and if you're saying that on whatever it is that you want, so we're saying that, is this then extra when your needs have been met? Or are we saying, for example, this 3,252 in the rural area and this 5,995 is on basic needs plus everything else? Or have your basic needs been spent on, and then you should then have this extra to then be able to do what you want? Because have children gone to school? Have you bought food for the month? Have you paid for your housing? Have you paid for your transport? And then you have this money left over to then engage in luxury? Or are we saying that all your needs, you should have this 6,000 bob to be able to spend on? Or is it extra?
Okay. When I say 3,252 in rural areas, I meant this is the amount that you can use to purchase food and other non-food
Food
items. Okay? And
Including housing,
including
clothes,
everything, yes.
education,
Yes.
healthcare.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we do first is we do what we call food poverty line. The basic thing when you get money, what do you buy? You buy food for yourself.
Yeah.
So when you buy food, we have the poverty line for food, and we call it food poverty line. And for this case, for 2015-16, we had it at 1,954
For food.
for food.
Okay.
That is for rural.
Yes.
So if you are in the rural areas and you are one person, that's the much you need for your food.
Okay.
But if you are 4, then you have to multiply that figure by 4.
By 4.
So if you're able to spend 1954 per individual on food in the rural area, then you're not poor.
You're not poor.
Okay.
So if you have 4 individuals, then you multiply that amount by 4.
Yes.
But there's a small conundrum here with the way Kenyans live. The assumption is that when people eat, they buy all that food. In towns such as Nairobi, that is not entirely true. Because there are very many people who actually get their food directly from the sources, through their relatives, through their farms, through whatever. Now, I am certain that you people have captured this. But of interest is this. What people spend money on, if it's in the urban area, is housing, an element of security, light, things to do with that. And they also spend it on non-agricultural consumables like soap and what have you and what have you. But then again, if I know how Kenyans are, there is what you buy off the shelf in supermarkets. But there are very many industries under the radar where this same soap is produced, this same detergent is produced. You won't find it in the shelf, but it is sold. You talk about liquid soap, it is produced. You talk about maize meal. There's somebody who has a mill somewhere in Kibra, Mukuru kwa Njenga. So all you need to do is have maize, and you take it, and it's ground for you.
But bottom line, CT, is in the person spending money to acquire all these things.
The point that
Whether you're buying food from a shop, a supermarket, or a maize meal, or you're importing food from upcountry, you're spending money to get the food.
somebody is spending money, and where I'm going with this is that this complexity and diversity, this is a question I want to ask, is it captured when you come up with a clear understanding and saying these are the poverty lines, below this, above this, are all these factors are considered? That's really what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I like your question. Actually, when we are collecting information, we ask first, did you purchase?
Okay.
So the first one is consumption from purchases. The second one is consumption from own production. I'm a farmer, I consume from my own farm.
Right.
So that is consumption from that. Then there's consumption from stock. You had some stock that remained, and
the
you are
previous
consuming from that stock.
Okay.
And lastly, you can consume from gifts. The one now you're saying, there is somebody who sent food from upcountry and you consume. So at the end of the day, we aggregate all this, and then we value it. So we value it based on what was purchased. If it is ugali, the unga that we have talked about, you got it from upcountry as a gift, or you consume it from your own production. Then how much did you consume? Then we have this price per kilogram, and we're asking you, what did you consume in the last 7 days? That is valued. Everything is valued in that complexity. Yes.
Okay, which takes me now to my next question. When we collect the data, how do we determine the sampling? How do we determine who we are going to talk to? Again, methodology comes in. Is it random? Is it purposive? Is it... And then the sample size. In all the things that we're looking at, how do we determine... Okay, there's a way of determining what's an adequate sample size. But again, these complexities that often involve you involve yourself when you go into research. How do we arrive at this?
Okay, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics have a frame where we have all the members, all the households in Kenya from census. So from this, we create a frame. And a frame is whereby we have what we call clusters. A village, for example, I can call it, when you create it where you have all the members in that place, that village, we'll call it a cluster. So the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has that frame that we'll go and sample from. Now, for us to start working is at what level do you want to aggregate your data? If I want to aggregate my data at the county level, then I have to go to those clusters. How many clusters do I need, or how many households do I need from Nairobi County? If I need 5,000 households, for example, from Nairobi, then I have to sample from all that. And the sampling here is a multi-stage, where we go to the cluster, from the cluster we go to the household, from the household we get the individuals. So it is always scientific. You have to go through all that methodology to get what you want. We are not using purposive. Yeah.
When you now get to the point where you're finding out, all right, so these are the figures that we're finding of people who are then below the poverty line. Do you go further to find out what has driven them to the situation that they're facing? Could be government policy, it could be climatic conditions, force majeure, COVID, it could be health, declining health, it could be loss of the breadwinner in a household. Do you go further to find out whether what is contributing to the growing levels of poverty or the reducing levels of poverty?
Yes, we are supposed to be going above. After we have disseminated the information, we are supposed to do what we call further analysis to look at the determinants of poverty. What determines this poverty in this given county? So we are supposed to do a further analysis on that. But what we normally do first is disseminate the information so that the government can use it to make policy.
So from what you had done previously, maybe the 2013, the 2016, or maybe the 2018, what did you find as the main determinants to poverty?
Okay, we've not gone further to look at the main determinants of poverty, but we normally give out, the other researchers can look at it. So from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, we normally don't go beyond. But these other approaches that was developed by Amartya Sen, the one now we are calling the multiple overlapping deprivation, you can look further and say what contributed to 53%. So you can look at education, you can look at sanitation, you can look at all that, health. So that can be like determinant. But actually you are supposed to produce a report on determinants of poverty when we do the analysis. Yeah.
I'm asking this because there was a question yesterday from Julia Kagituju, who's continuing the same question today. Yesterday she said, she was asking, when did they kill the market liberalization for milk? Why did the tea bonus shrink to 26 bob? My 90-year-old mom asked me, and I told her, I'm not aware, I don't know. And she says, now these factors have driven her mother to below the poverty line. She does everything to help her lot, but things not in her control just will not bother to budge, hence the poverty.
So
there are other factors here. For example, she's looking at, the mother is a dairy farmer, and now she does not have free access to the market, according to her. Then she is also a tea farmer. Now the prices of tea and the income from tea has dwindled. All these things have now led Julia's mother to where she says 90-year-old mom below the poverty line.
Yeah, that's what I said. Now we need to go further and look at determinants of poverty in that way, looking at this particular household that is poor, what caused poverty, so which we have not done. So I cannot clearly say that what happened to Julia's mother. Is it because of lack of access to the market or what? So that further analysis, we have not done it.
So this is now done by others, say
yeah.
Ministry of Planning.
Mostly is done by researchers at the university.
And KIPRA?
And KIPRA, yes.
Okay. Kipkorir says things are really, really bad in the ground. I have worked in Mombasa for 7 years now, but what I see is indeed a different hard situation for everyone. We're in a difficult situation under brutal leadership. Now, I'm not asking you to comment on the brutal leadership. It's about, does it reflect in your data about the situation where, as people are responding to your questions, do you sense the frustration, the anger out of the, what when they're answering this and saying, you're asking me where I bought, I did not buy. I was depending on well-wishers for a long time, and there's that pain. Are you able to actually filter sentiment?
No, ours is just to give you the measurement.
These are quantitative people,
Yes.
my friend.
Yeah. So
Yes, you ask a qualitative question, and then that one, as he correctly put it, there are other people who deal with those things. But Eric, if you consider, for instance, just the measure that our brother here is talking about,
Yes.
when you look at the sources from where people derive their income, it usually provides you with a direction and a clear indication of what will happen to people who derive an income from that particular sector if something goes wrong with the sector. For instance, if, say, we have a dry season and people who are tea farmers and who depend on a lot of rainfall don't have it, that entire sector will be affected. So livelihoods will automatically be affected. I know this because I live in a sugar growing area. And I have seen what it is, the vagaries of pricing and the vagaries of just the process of payment has done to the sugarcane farmer. A once upon a time prosperous person. Now, you actually wonder whether you should actually use your sugarcane for fuel. I mean, literally, rather than selling it, because it takes 2 years for it to mature. And then it takes you another 2 years to get paid. It beats any form of logic. So if you are a sugarcane farmer, just those vagaries in that sector would render you poor, because that's what you depended on.
And this is the situation on the ground.
Yes. Why do you think it is that when the world market and the production of coffee, things changed? Sri Lanka was at war for a long time, isn't it? Just civil war. And they're a tea producing country. So what it meant was what they could export in the world market was much reduced. So we did very well with our tea. Then they stopped fighting. They produced tea.
And they went a bit further. They also did value addition to their tea.
Which we have not done and we keep talking about. So the tea farmer is going to have a problem.
Well, Samoei, I must ask then, I know that you are mandated to collect this information and this data, but what is the end goal? Because this data, for me, as in information is given, thereupon decisions are made. Thereupon policy is set in motion. There you can now go back on a previously made decision based on new information or data that has come to you. So in as much as, we can go ahead and collect the information because we're mandated to do so, is there an intended goal? Not just because we're asked to, but to say, look, these are the trends. Can we push out this information so that hopefully policy can change? Like CT is saying now, for example, you've seen that tea prices are dropping globally, or you're seeing that they're increasing globally because there's value addition in a particular area. So can we collect information that is needed here in Kenya, and can we do something about it policy-wise? Is there an advisory role also here that is played for government, for policymakers, for private sector to say, look, guys, this is what we are seeing. Can we make some change? The poverty that we could be seeing in 2021, 2022, even though you may not have the data for it right now, is clearly different because it has been affected by a global pandemic, for example. Now, as you see things like that happening, do you ever play an advisory role to some of these stakeholders, to some of these policymakers, to government, and say, look, guys, the numbers are not looking very good. Is there something we can do to divert a tragedy? Is there something we can do to maybe put more of this money in the hands of Kenyans? Does this ever happen? Because the information, or there should be data-driven decision-making at any government level.
Thank you. When we started, Eric said that we have a mandate. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics mandate is to collect, analyze, and produce the information. Okay? And we store the data. The other government agencies that are supposed to be working now on the policy.
Okay.
One of them is KIPRA. The rest are the ministries.
Yes.
So they themselves are supposed to pick the information and go further and see how that one is affecting policy, and then they can advise the government on policy issues. So us is just to collect, give you the situation. This is the situation. Another government agency act now to look at the policy. Yeah.
Are there instances where other government agencies have actually questioned your data or your methodology and told you, what you're producing here, you guys, is different from what we are feeling on the ground?
Of course, people will ask the methodology. Like he has asked us about the methodology. How did you arrive to this? So always there are questions on methodology. And whenever we sit down with that person and take that person through the methodology and he understands the methodology, then we are okay. So that one is there. Always you can come and say, how did you arrive at these figures? We'll show you the methodology and we agree. Yes.
You know what I found of interest in what you said? There is not only undeniable but irrefutable platform from which whatever Kenya National Bureau of Statistics does emanates from. It's called a census. Because census counts everybody in the country. And if you look at, as you were talking, I was thinking of the questions that they ask. Some are a bit invasive, but they actually have the information.
It's actually called a what demographic survey?
There is
That census, the one for
the census we did was the Kenya Population and Housing Census.
Kenya Population and Housing Census.
Yes.
So when I think of the questions that they were asking, they were data mining at a very, very high level.
Yep.
It's just that it doesn't hit you. When he said when it hit me, and I said, but they already have this information. It's a question of just collating it. And then if you're talking about the people who are born and people who also die, that information is also available.
Yes.
So it isn't difficult to figure out, because when they ask you, so your income, what do you do? You already told them. So it can be aggregated as to we have X number of people who do this in the country, X number who do this. So if there's a problem in that particular sector, it's not difficult to sort of like drive and say, if this is what's happening here, you can just walk along that road, and at the end of it, you'll realize this is where we've arrived at.
Yeah.
Yes. But you don't talk enough about what you do and how you do it.
Maybe that is the part we need to work on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely. I think you actually do. You didn't ask the question about the middle.
I was waiting.
Middle what?
I'm going to ask him. Yes, there's this.
Time is done.
No,
Okay,
I'm going to ask it anyway in 10 seconds.
Yes.
This middle class in Kenya, is it a reality or is it fiction?
The middle class.
This group we keep calling middle class. And you guys have categorized the income this person must have to fall into the category of the middle class. It is you who have given us those figures.
Okay.
The short answer to it in 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds. Of course, we have those people at the higher, then the middle, and those people who are below the poverty. These middle class are the people, when everything changes, they will always fall into poverty.
Is that not a more definitive definition?
Kobisa. So, Paul, in the last 20 years, has the middle class in Kenya grown?
Yeah,
And is it still growing?
it's still growing.
Okay. So we have a growing middle class.
We have people
The
who
potential to fall
just
into
require
one little
change
twist.
to
Of
fall
course.
into
Poverty.
But today, where they are, they're middle class.
Okay.
But I would like to make one thing,
Yeah.
is that the figures that are in the fact sheet are not new figures. It's just that somebody went and did some collection, put them in a simplicity way of understanding.
So they may appear
They
new,
are not new data sets, but they were packaged
afresh.
to produce that fact sheet.
Okay.
And number two, the figures that were saying Kenyans are 50-something million, no. And why are they getting it from the World Bank? We are the custodian of data. And if they want projection,
should
they
come
come
to-
to Kenya.
Yes.
We know
Kenya
who we
National
are.
Bureau of Statistics.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.